everyone. Welcome to another executive interview. I'm Rhythm, your host for today, and today joining us is a distinguished figure in the world of investments and commercial property, Mr. Campbell Newman, with an impressive background as a chairman of Arcana Capital and a history of influential roles in both politics and business. Campbell brings a wealth of expertise to the table. Thank you for joining me here today, Campbell.
To be with you.
Amazing. Now, commercial property investments can be quite complex and diverse. So to begin with, could you highlight some key trends or emerging areas within the Australian market that investors should be keeping an eye on?
Sure. Well, look, I think at the moment, firstly, let's talk about the interest rate cycle, where our Reserve Bank, like other central banks, is trying to quell inflation. They have put up interest rates quite significantly, almost 400 basis points in a very short period of time. It's now starting to work. The latest inflation figures say inflation's come back down significantly. It's now down at 4.9 from around 7. What has that meant for the property market? Well, the property market has reached its peak and is coming off. It's coming off the boil. And indeed, there are significant significant softening of capital rates, cap rates, on commercial property assets, particularly in the office sector. So one of my big things that I'll be putting forward in my keynote today is that there are opportunities in office because there's very bad sentiment out of COVID against office in Australia, particularly in CBDs. The mantra is that people won't be coming back to the office, less requirement for office space. And so the CBDs are in a fair bit of trouble. What does that mean, though? Well, the whole of the office market has been caught up in that. And so cap rates, as I said before, have softened significantly. But if you go outside the CBDs and you buy selected office buildings in suburban areas or key satellite cities, you can actually buy really well now. As long as there's lots of car parks, good public transport, access to road networks, you can actually buy well. Another point I'll be making today that investors need to think about in Australia is, while Australia is a great place to invest, it's a safe place to invest, and all these statements are relative. Sadly, in the last 5 years, many Australian governments have put in place imposts on foreign investors. And so I just say to many people who would like to buy something themselves and own it and have control, and they're an offshore investor, I understand that philosophy. But there really is a need to do your homework because you will be penalised depending on the state. If you invest alongside other investors through unlisted property trusts or the like we run, if you invest alongside Australian investors, you can actually be in a position where you are not being hit in that way because, you know, if the interest is the right level, you'll be insulated from those sort of costs. So those are my key take-homes at the moment. There are buying opportunities coming on now. The market's come off the boil, but you need to proceed in a way that is tax effective and ensures that you don't get something that is affected by overall market sentiment.
Amazing. Well, fascinating insights there, Campbell, for sure. Now, speaking of investors, let's delve into some considerations for them. So what are some key factors that sophisticated investors should consider when they are evaluating commercial property investment opportunities?
Well, look, it's the fundamentals. We always look at, firstly, the location of the asset. We're looking at, is it in a growth market? So is there upside? We're looking at the building itself, the age, the plant and equipment, whether there's capital upgrade requirements, particularly the tenants, the quality of those tenants. Are there arrears problems in the sort of the actual asset, in terms of tenants not behind in paying their rent? We also look at the particular jurisdiction, and there's a particular Australian state which has been, I think, bringing sovereign risk, and I hate to say it about Australia, but the state of Victoria has a budgetary problem. They have put in place some very significant extra imposts on the property sector, and so I personally couldn't recommend investing in Victoria at the current time. So we look at all those sort of factors when we make our decisions, and that's what people should do. And offshore investors really do need to seek expertise. If they want to go and buy something themselves, they do need to engage with local reputable real estate firms like, say, JLL, CBRE, some of the majors, Colliers, and really understand what they're getting into and go through that due diligence. You must do due diligence and also get legal advice.
Absolutely. Well, that's a very valid point, Campbell. Now, you'll also be participating in a panel session discussing alternative investments. So could you elaborate on how you see alternative investments shaping the investment landscape today, and what role do they actually play in diversifying investment portfolios?
Well, this is something I'm particularly passionate about. It's not with my property hat on. Property's the stable, hopefully meat and potatoes. Whereas if we want to have a proper portfolio, we need to actually be investing in listed equities, but also then putting money into more speculative, higher risk, of course, but higher return and selected sort of early stage companies. And that's what I do as well in my sort of with my investment portfolio. So I think it's really important. In Australia, there's been a huge emphasis on property. And I would always urge Australian investors, Australian wholesale investors, to ensure that they do participate in the early stage unlisted sort of property market as per the sort of offerings that a wholesale investor is putting on the table. And there are other ways to get involved. There's my good friend Steve Baxter and his 1013 VC fund. There's also Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne Angel groups, investor groups. They're good ways to get in as well. But I'd really urge Australians who tend to be cautious about these things to have a good look. Hey, give it a go. You will lose money on some of them, but every now and then you'll get a very, very good one. You've got to be part of the process and evaluate those founders, but you can have a great time doing it.
Absolutely. Well said, Campbell. Now, what advice would you give to investors who are actually intrigued by alternative investments, but they are quite uncertain about how to effectively incorporate them into the existing investment strategies?
Well, I think I sort of already answered that in a way, in that I would suggest that people, firstly think about their overall portfolio. What is the size of their asset base that they want to deploy capital into? Make some strategic allocations. Anybody who's coming to a conference like this would really get that, of course. But then allocate. Actually, make a determined decision to say, I'm going to allocate so much of a percent to these alternative investments, to these early stage companies, because that's where going in early can give great rewards. And then you participate through a platform like Wholesale Investor or through perhaps the other groups that I mentioned before.
Absolutely. Well, Campbell, these were some really wonderful insights that you share with us. So, Campbell, we are here today at the Arcana Capital Singapore Investment Conference, and it has been such a pleasure working with Arcana Capital and now having you as one of our panelists. So, it would be great if you could tell us how's your experience been at the event so far. Any key takeaways that you have to share?
Well, look, it's absolutely been terrific fun to be involved, firstly, and I have just so enjoyed meeting all these people. And there are firms I'm meeting here that I never knew existed who are in Australia, indeed in my own backyard, as we say, that I can do business with, I hope, and will help, for example, with our commercial property portfolio in reducing the environmental footprint, saving energy and the like. And that's been really, really rewarding. And of course, it's been great, though, to also meet potential investors in our fund as well. So I'd really recommend the experience for people to participate next year.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Campbell. Such a pleasure to speak to you here today and learning wonderful things that you have shared with us. And thank you to our viewers for joining in. And I look forward to seeing you all in our next interview. Thank you.